Well, good evening. It's good to be with you for another edition of the Kevin Cook Show. Heidi Hollis can't be with us tonight, but I'm sure she'll show up next week. And we've got a good guest, and Dina Rae. She's written a book on all kinds of interesting facets. It's called The Sequel. And we've got aliens, reptilians, Vrills, the Vril Society, Hitler, the occult, Hollow Earth, and Antarctica. And I ought to be, and even some JFK info we'll throw in there. So it's going to be a good show. We've had Dina on before. She's a good guest. But all kinds of news is hopping and bopping all over the place, folks. And I mean, this is getting pretty dicey with this North Korea business because they launched an ICBM today that went 2,300 miles into space. And to get a reference, the space station's only 200 odd miles out there. But here's the thing. If it was on a normal trajectory, instead of, just a big high arcing trajectory, it could have hit Washington, D.C. In other words, it would have gone like 8,100 miles if it wasn't pointed just straight up practically. And in other words, this would threaten the continental United States. And furthermore, it did go over Japan. They're always firing it in the direction of Japan as an extra provocation. So it landed in Japan's economic zone in the Sea of Japan. But what I'm getting at, though, is I don't know what the overall game is. I mean, this little pipsqueak country is obviously trying to be threatening us, and of course, our allies, Japan, we have treaties with them. And certainly, if it could hit Washington, D.C., they could land it in Guam. But I mean, I can't understand a little pipsqueak nowheresville country trying to take on the biggest army and navy in the world. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, people. But I don't know what the game is, whether it's just more of a blackmail the United States and everybody else to get some kind of trade concessions or money. I don't know. Or maybe this guy's just bonkers. I just don't know that either. But in any case, it's a real issue. And Trump said that we're going to take care of it, but oh, geez. I mean, Trump will say anything, man. I mean, this guy's I'm essentially a conservative type. And, initially I was, enthused with Trump, and I sure didn't want, Clinton. But what I'm saying is I want somebody smart and have a little sense about it. And, I'm for, building the wall, having closed borders, all that stuff. Yeah. But I mean, it's like the stuff he pulled the other day when he's meeting with these surviving Navajo code talkers from World War II, and he makes a crack about Elizabeth Warren and her Pocahontas thing. And to be candid, yes, Elizabeth Warren is about as Indian as I am. I mean, she had some folklore from her family, but at the very best, the way they figured it, the very best, if that was accurate, if she was 1/32nd Indian. And she's been posing as being of Indian descent and stuff like that, American Indian descent. But folks, 1/32nd wouldn't merit you any category of being a minority or anything like that. That's not enough to say you've got an Indian left toe or something. I mean, come on, 1/32nd. But if you ever sent your DNA, which I've not done, by the way, but if you ever did send your DNA to Ancestry.com, almost all of us are composites of all kinds of things because of migrations and what have you. And, I'd show up predominantly Irish and Russian. Yeah. But I'd also be part Transylvanian. So, I mean, but what I'm getting at relative to Elizabeth Warren, if she was using that as a political tool to get some kind of minority status. And Trump was right in making fun of her, but you don't make fun of it in front of a bunch of other Indians. I mean, that's just really crazy. But anyhow, so for Trump to say they're going to take care of North Korea, I'd have to see it. But I do believe, and all kidding aside, I do believe that we're going to eventually go to war with these people, because you can't just be, I mean, after a certain point, after you've got the missile technology, which they did say in our military today, they did say that by next year they will have the technology they need to actually knock one off here. We've got to do something about it. You can't have somebody threatening you and shooting missiles over, allies in our territory and just dismiss it. You can't do that. But anyway, we'll see how that plays out. Also, in another little quirky thing, is Uzbekistan, one of the little Stan countries that were part of the former Soviet Union, has had examples of the same high frequency harassment as our diplomats have faced in Cuba. In other words, causes hearing loss and some kind of cognitive losses and stuff. And these people are genuinely crippled up by this, and they're thinking it may be Russian in origin. So that came up today, and that's pretty exotic too. Another thing that came up exotic, get this. The National Enquirer might be buying Time magazine, which would be okay by me, but I mean, it is different, folks. It really is. Now, we're coming sort of close to the end of the news piece, but I got to tell you this one. A Japanese physicist named Masaru Emoto has shown how different effects affect water. Like if you play pleasant music, water will form ice crystals and stuff in a nice, pleasant geometric form. But if you play something kind of wretched like heavy metal, it'll make ugly designs in the crystals. And that also has been found with plants. If there are people that actually play music to see how plants react, and if you play awful ruckusy music, the plants will not grow well. But if you play, say opera, not necessarily opera, but just symphonic music, the plants react well to it. So I don't know how that is or why that is, but ruckusy stuff tends to affect water and plants, and pleasant music makes things go better. So I don't know, but this came up, and I thought that was an interesting tidbit. And here's one more just before we go to the break. Get this. Don Pettit, a former U.S. astronaut, when he was asked about the United States going back to the moon, he says, we don't have the technology anymore to do it. We'd have to redevelop it. Now, guys, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, we haven't been to the moon in a zillion years. So how could the technology not be better 40 years on like we are now than it was at the time of the moon landings? I mean, this is really a bizarre thing. I'd like to have Pettit on and grill him on that, but there wasn't that much explanation of it beyond that, but this made no sense. Anyhow, we're going to go to break, and we're going to have Dina Rae on with us. We're going to have a really, really interesting show. So be right back, guys. We'll be right back. Well, I'm glad to be back with Dina Rae. And Dina, how you doing tonight? You doing okay?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I mentioned at the introduction that the book is called The Sequel.
Yes.
The bestseller series. And you're saying that it's on Amazon at a 99-cent special, Amazon.com?
Yeah, for Cyber Monday week. And then it'll go back to the regular price on Friday.
Okay, sure enough. So Amazon.com, and that's what, the digital, of course, the digital version?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Well, I mean, this is a heck of a book. Aliens, Reptilians, Vril Society, Hitler, the occult, the Hollow Earth, and Antarctica. And so we'll talk about some JFK stuff, but, that's some very exotic and interesting material. But, golly, Dina, the news pieces are almost as exotic as that. I mean, this is a weird little time we're living in. I can't remember any time we'd be worried about some little nitwit North Korean guy. And
I know.
My goodness.
It's scary.
It is, but obviously we're going to have to bomb the place. What else can you do?
Yeah.
You can't just snooze through it. But, I've always been interested, in the Hitler thing and whether he really escaped to South America or, what happened to him? And what do you think about that? Do you think he did shove off to South America at the end of the war? Or?
Absolutely. In fact, there was. I wish I had the name of the book handy, but there is a seamen who helped him and Bormann and a couple other high-ranking Nazis get out of Germany, and they went, I think, first to Norway, kind of like in the opposite direction, and then they kind of snaked around very slowly, and ended up in supposedly Argentina.
Oh yeah, Argentina. I heard of that. I heard that record.
And then the JFK file just came out a few weeks ago, and then he supposedly set up shop, so to speak, and lived out the rest of his life in Colombia.
Well, we talked about that over the phone before the show, and it's wild when you told me that, because they've really said very little about what the JFK documents said. But something as dramatic as that, what the heck are they doing? I mean, how can they call themselves journalists?
Well, it's, just another example of, what news is nowadays. It's really not news. It's like Hitler, going back to Hitler's times. Goebbels was the master of this, and I think our own newsmen and women are into propaganda now and not news. And I don't.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't just want to hit on CNN. I think Fox can be just as one-sided.
Or CBS,
Yeah. Most of them seem liberal, but there's a few conservative ones that will not address a story that makes Trump look bad. So,
right.
And then the other ones, that's all they do. So
yeah, I know. It's the whole evening. Well, CBS I listen to CBS a lot, and they go out of their way to do it. But Trump steps on his own tongue all the time. But still, realistically, I mean, most of these guys have, they were a little smoother than Trump. I mean, they were dirtbags behind the scene, yes. I mean, you couldn't get much lower down than Bill Clinton, as far as, all kind, not just the womanizing, but all the, all the chicanery and, all the stuff all the way back to Whitewater, whatever it was called in Arkansas and all that. But what I'm saying is, the news media never hardly said a thing about that. Every now and then, but not much. But something on this, like info on Hitler or something, that would be something that ought to make top of the line news on CBS.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I heard a blurb of it on Fox News, and then I heard a blurb of it on my personal favorite channel, which is OAN News. I don't know if you even heard of it. It's a small, they're on certain cable packages, and they're independent. I can't even tell you who owns the station. I looked it up, and they prefer to be anonymous.
Really?
I mean, I don't watch CNN anymore, so I don't know if they had anything about this. But to me, this wouldn't just be a 1-second story. It would be a 2-hour special.
Sure. I mean, it's historical info like that would be major stuff. That'd be like almost from movie size info. But I know. I mean, obviously they're controlling the release of that. They obviously are. They carry petty things all the time. This would be certainly a major development to find that info out.
Yeah, the Soviets took Hitler's, partially, his body was supposedly partially cremated, which is very weird to begin with. He kills himself, and then the Germans cremate his body. Kind of weird. But there was enough remains that they could run a DNA test, and the body that the Soviets took was of a 20 to 40-year-old woman. So that's genetic fact. So that body was never even his. It was obviously meant to be some kind of decoy.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't doubt that at all. See, I'd heard these rumors, growing up. You'd hear little I think there was even, if I remember correctly, and this is way back when I was a kid or something, there was a movie or a book called The Boys from Brazil or something.
Yeah.
Or something. You know, just the whole lore of the Nazis going to Argentina or Brazil or somewhere and hanging out and, you know, like that. But to have something so momentous, that's almost a news story in itself, how that was hushed up. I'm glad at least Fox carried it.
Briefly, but I guess that's better than nothing.
Well, certainly better than CBS, because I know I should have a more varied, and I do on the internet. I look at different internet feeds, but I guess I'm just a creature of habit because I grew up as a kid listening to Walter Cronkite or something, and Dan Rather, and I guess I just kept with it. But I can promise you, CBS News said nothing about it. Nothing, not even a whisper.
Well, people say, oh, you can't change history. Well, yeah, you can. And it's being done right now on so many different levels. And I know, for example, not to rag too much on Germany, but both of my books are not allowed to be sold in Germany because there's a swastika signs on the cover. Oh, they won't? They can't sell them there? No. Is that? Right. Really? Apparently to me, why not? Do you want to erase what had happened? I guess so. And I had heard on another news channel that their history books really skip a whole lot of World War II and what they were doing at those concentration camps. So they are trying to clean it up or something. Yeah. They are rewriting their own history. Well, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. And because, anybody that's a thinking individual, not beating this story into the ground, but just that one story that would be such a historical insight into Hitler and what happened to him and all this, especially with all the rumors over the years, for the news stories, news media not to pick that up is very questionable. Raises a big red flag that they're crooked. They really are. For what? But there's another story I had in the news piece that Don Pettit, I think his name was. He was a former astronaut, and what he said was, in a recent quote, Don Pettit, he said that we can't go back to the moon right now because we don't have the technology anymore. But now, wait a minute. Now, Dina, this doesn't make any sense. You're talking 1960s, 1970s era technology. How could we not have better technology than that? My God. I heard that the whole, a little cell phone would have more computing power than they had on the moon mission. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Stanley Kubrick conspiracy, but he was that famous movie director he did The Shining, is probably one of his most famous films. Well, he was part of the Illuminati, and they hired him to film. This is, of course, I don't want to say it like it's true, but this is the theory. And he was hired to film that whole entire man on the moon landing. And he had a high position within the Illuminati. And he just felt so bad about it that movie, The Shining, is giving clues all over the place about that. Stephen King was infuriated because it didn't follow his book. He eventually made his own The Shining movie, made for TV, but Kubrick used that movie gig to he put in all kinds of like subliminal messages. Really? I didn't know. If you watch it again, you watch it with a new set of eyes. And then, of course, later on in life, in the 90s, he was filming Eyes Wide Shut with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, and that was about the Illuminati, and he mysteriously had a heart attack in the middle of that film. Yeah. Kubrick did? Yeah. He was... Really? if you see the film, there's all kinds of rituals going on in it, and right in the middle of the film, he dies.
Well, it seems like I remember The Shining, but that was so many years ago, and there's been so many King flicks, I forgot it. But I don't remember it too well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, this Illuminati thing has always been lurking around the background, and I've heard references to them over the years, but I don't know. There's so much going on that makes no sense. But for this Pettit guy to say that we don't have the technology we had then 40 years ago, I mean, everything has changed in that time. I mean, we should have technology. We'd go to the moon and have a cup of coffee and come back in a day, damn near now. I mean, not really, but I mean, still, compared to 1970, I mean, my goodness. It's like I say, getting back to the computing power business, they said that, one cell phone is like light years beyond what they had then. So none of this makes any sense. I wish I could have this Pettit on and ask him, what the heck did you mean by that, buddy? Because, I mean, I know in rockets, they've got bigger rockets than they had now, and certainly more efficient technology. I don't know, but that came up, and that just like raised an eyebrow, too, that you almost wonder, I guess. Of course, you deal in very interesting speculative items, but you wonder, golly, Dina, what is true out there? I mean,
I'm to that point. When the story broke the other day about the slush fund of taxpayer money that pays off women who were harassed or whatever
or something,
by these bums we got in Congress. I can tell you, I was not an iota surprised. So many people were in shock. It's like, are you kidding me? That we're just scratching the surface of what they do with our taxpayer money.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Well, there was a story I had on a less seamy note, but kind of sort of shows you how crooked they really are. Was CBS did have this like about a year and a half ago, that all congressmen, Republican and Democratic both, are required to raise funds for 20 to 25 hours a week themselves. I don't mean their staff. I mean on the phone, like phone soliciting, like a salesman.
Oh, geez.
And I've done that kind of work for years. I've been a salesman for centuries. But what I'm saying is, if you work the phone for 20 hours a week, you wouldn't have enough energy to do much of nothing. I mean, you'd be a played out son of a gun because it just takes a lot out of you.
Right.
And like I say, I'm not talking about them farming this out to their workers. I mean, the individual rep. So that, and CBS, to its credit, did cover that. So, I mean, if they'll do that, that's basically what I'm saying in a nutshell. So that's all they do. I mean, I know I've always heard that a lot of their staffers just read the stuff themselves and summarize it for the rep. They're too lazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's at least they do something, I guess. They raise money for themselves. That's what they do. That's their job.
I know, that's their whole job. Because CBS showed where the Democrats do it at this building and the Republicans do it at that, and they have to do it. It's not like optional. But I don't know. We're coming up to our bottom of the hour break, but there's so much interesting material here. I know we're going to have a great show. But we'll be right back after our first break, and we'll talk about some of these different topics. We'll be right back. Let's get back to Dina. And yes, Dina, this is some crazy stuff. But I guess really you're mentioning those congressmen. But just before the break, there's a Texas congressman they had on TV, some big old fat devil named Joe Barton or something. I mean, he had some pornographic photos that showed up, and he's like a 300-pound whale. And I'm thinking, holy moly, what kind of zoo is going on? I mean, I'd really, even way back in the 1800s, Mark Twain used to talk down Congress in deprecating terms, but he wasn't near hard enough. These people, oh my God, these people would make the rats in the New York sewer system sick, but it is amazing. It is amazing. It really is. I mean, even this old buzzard, this old crypt keeper after George Bush Sr.
Oh,
He's always grabbing women by the rear end or something. I mean, a guy in a wheelchair is putting the grabs on women's rear ends, and I'm thinking, what kind of stuff is this, man? I mean, oh golly, it amazes me because Dina, I'm not, trying to be an egomaniac, but I never had to chase women down very much. It was more the other way around, and I never, had to grope any of them or anything. It was always had to be selective about who I went around with, But I'm just saying I can't believe there's this extreme is what I'm saying. Really.
I mean, I just have to laugh. They're going to have sexual harassment training. If they don't know what sexual harassment is, then how the hell do you get in front of a microphone and say you champion women's rights and all this other hogwash, and you don't even know what sexual harassment is? I mean, what a cop-out. Let's get real. They feel that no one can touch them. They can do whatever the heck they want. Rules don't apply to them. And they can, act the fool without any repercussions. And I mean, look at that. Al Franken thought it was a riot and took a picture of himself.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the mentality we're dealing with. You can't touch me. I can do whatever I want. And that's what
I know.
it's
It's bizarre to me because, like I say, most of the buddies I've had over the years, they don't do that. I mean, my business partner, he's, always been a ladies' man type guy. He never had groping women. It's more like, go with whoever, just how it, go with the flow. You don't have to be, extreme like that or, I don't even know what the term is, but I mean sleazy or whatever. But these guys are monsters. I mean, this guy that looks like a beluga whale, he's sending pornographic pictures. I'm thinking, holy moly, buddy, you ought to cover that up, not send it around. And it's just weird. It's just weird. But obviously, you're right on, and that what they're doing is they feel they're above the law, above rules of etiquette or anything else, that they're just able to rape and pillage the way whatever they want to do. So.
Yeah, and I mean, just a quick end note on that, like that Harvey Weinstein guy.
My God, yeah.
Part of me is like, well, those actresses, they'll do anything to get a part in a B movie, so part of me is kind of like, well, but then, he's got all of these women screaming rape and all this other stuff, and all these people knew about it and never said anything, and then they'll sit and they'll lecture the rest of us on what is decent and this and that and who we should be voting for president, and it's mind-boggling.
Well, it really is. It really is. Now, I have to admit, over the years, I heard that term casting couch, which, they always were trying to get sexual favors to give jobs to. I mean, I heard that existed, but I didn't know it was as widespread as all that either. And I also didn't know it applied to the political arena. I mean, well, now, in fairness, Bill Clinton hit the sack with everybody that was
he was accused of rape and all kinds of stuff, so it wasn't just a mutual thing. We're taking it to a whole nother level.
Oh yeah, I think so. But it just goes to show that people that are that bad morally, they'll lie about anything, and that gets back to what we were originally talking about is I don't know, you'd have to have a portable lie detector or voice analysis machine to believe anything they said. And about these secretive issues, I mean, I know this. We'll get into your stuff in just a minute, but I got to tell you this, because there was a guy named John Alexander. He was Colonel John Alexander. He was a guest I had on a couple years ago, and he was a retired Green Beret colonel, and he also worked for the CIA for 20 years. And, he's a really high-quality guy. And, I mean, this guy, I'd asked him, being an ex-Army guy and stuff, he said, what are you, an idiot? How'd you ever make it in the Army? I mean, of course there's UFOs. I mean, in other words, to say, he was just saying, you'd have to be a dribble down your chin idiot to not realize there are UFOs.
Right.
And, I mean, to believe what the government tries to spout as far as the conspiracy theorist, which is a term they came up with, to try to, put you down. that's just nonsense. In other words, you'd have to be a chuckle-headed idiot not to believe in UFOs. And,
I couldn't agree more. I could not. Obviously, I'm writing about it and
sure.
going to Roswell, and I'm very much into all of that, and I like all of those TV shows they've got out now too are great, like Ancient Aliens and I think everybody's curious at this point. We want to know the truth.
Well, the best one I liked, I might have mentioned to you on the phone, but it was that painting in an Italian magazine that has the Virgin Mary in the foreground and in the background is a UFO. And that's been in the constant custody of that museum in Italy for 500 years before any literature on UFOs or movies 500 years. And now where did those medieval guys come up with the idea of a little UFO looking thing? And I mean, that was a disc, basically. That was weird. But anybody can look it up on Google, just Virgin Mary and UFO, and it'll be right there. And I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. Well, you think there's an overriding group that kind of controls the media on that, I guess?
I do. I know this might sound a little bit out there, but I do believe that there is a group, an inner circle that consults with these aliens, and they are preparing the world for one world government, for a new world order. And so there's already been quite a few slips. I think it was the Canadian defense minister was on a talk show talking about how he has proof there's aliens. Then he went away. Then there was one of the Japanese prime minister's wives who had a whole lot to say about it. And it was a big story in Japan, but for some reason didn't get too much air here.
Really?
And I there are highly respected people coming out saying, yeah, there's aliens, all right. And, they at one time or another were in that inner circle and know for sure. So.
Well, that Japanese prime minister's wife said something that to the effect that there are aliens and what have you, and that wasn't covered in the media at all?
No, not in American media. It was on, the kind of obscure websites that I'm sure you go on to, and at Ancient Aliens actually aired that story too. Wow. So.
Wow. But once again, that should be a news item that CBS or NBC would pick up and say, hey, this is pretty interesting here, I mean, they have such trivia on there. That would certainly trump that, I know. That's just crazy. That's just so crazy. And yet, I did mention the news piece too, that National Enquirer might buy Time magazines, what they're speculating. But I'm not saying the National Enquirer is the best news mag that ever came down the pike, but a lot of the stuff they've reported on over the years has turned out to be true.
Right. Hardly anybody ever won. I think only a couple of people won suing them for libel. So. Yeah.
Well, but I've noticed that they've brought up stuff about this one, that one, the other one, and eventually it does come out that, so-and-so did such and such. And, I'm not making them out to be, Washington Post or something, but I'm just saying that they over the years they've been fairly credible. But that's that old deal about lying by omission they used to hear about when you were growing up, and that's exactly what it's doing. But in some of the subject matter you cover in the book, the sequel. What is it with these reptilians? Don't they think the Queen of England is rumored to be a reptilian?
You're exactly right. That all of this comes from an author, and I think he was did a little bit of radio and talk show too, named David Icke.
Oh yeah, Ike. I think it is.
Is it Ike or I'm not sure if it's Ike or
I think it's Ike, but I'm not really sure. We'll have to ask Joe. He's our answer man, but I think it's Ike.
It's
spelled Icky, though.
It might be. I've never seen any of his talk shows or listened to his radio, but I have read quite a bit about him, and he is convinced that this inner circle of who's who are not only are not people who are worshiping aliens, they're actually the aliens themselves, and they can shape shift into human beings. And he is the one who claims that every major leader the United States has ever had is somehow related to Queen Elizabeth, who is a reptilian.
Oh, wow.
He's got a lot of very interesting points. Now, some people criticize his mental capacity. Some people say that he's anti-Jewish because he's very anti-Rothschild.
Oh, yeah.
But a very interesting guy, and definitely reading up on him, reading his biographies and all of that was inspiring towards the book.
Well, this Rothschild guy has been mentioned as being the head of the Illuminati type guy and all that. Now, the average Jew that's running the bakery down the road doesn't have much to do with Rothschild. So I mean, you can be against Rothschild and be fine with Jews, but what I'm saying is he's always been considered a shadowy character. He sure has.
Yeah. And they're supposedly related to Queen Elizabeth too. So.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
There are all kinds of links to all of this. And, I find all of this very fascinating. And I guess it all kind of circles back to Hitler, who believed in aliens. He was in an occult called the Vril Society, and the I think it's pronounced Thule Society, and he had all kinds of supposed seances with extraterrestrial beings, with these girls who they had long ponytails, and they were members of the Vril. Maria Orsic was like one of the main ones, and I always thought, like, it was so strange to me that Hitler thought he could take over the world because he happened to be born of a German race. That, to me, just that isn't special enough, I guess. I just didn't make any sense. And then he teamed up with a whole entire different race, the Japanese. So that kind of
I know that didn't make a lot of sense. No, it didn't.
Right. Italian, okay, maybe, but Japanese, they're an entirely different race. So I often wondered what is really making him feel like he's so special and he's so superior, because in all fairness, if he wasn't crazy, he probably would have won the war. He had the best weapons for that generation.
Yeah, he certainly did at the time. They had jets even.
And their air program became our air program when we confiscated all those scientists back here to the United States. So he definitely had technology that the world had never seen before.
The issue was, where'd he get it? I mean, I remember that thing.
Right.
How the hell?
Exactly. Well, again, he's in the Vril Society. He's in the Thule Society. He's hanging out with Madame Blavatsky. He's got some weird thing going with, I don't know if this is not in your junior year history book by any means, but he also had this thing going with Tibetan monks. He was very interested very interested in the Himalayas. He sent one of his men to see the Dalai Lama in that whole culture. And they believe that the earth is hollow, and there's a city in the hollow earth called Agartha. So all of this stuff kind of piggybacks onto were aliens helping Hitler. And he believed more than anything in the Aryan race. And if you study what the Aryan race is, they are supposed descendants of the Atlantean race that
I didn't know that either.
were drowned in the Great Flood.
Right. I remember the story of Atlantis, kind of, sort of, this supposedly a continent that was flooded and so forth, but I didn't know they were theoretically the Aryans were their descendants. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they all are related. And when you really break it down to why he thought he was so special, you can't help but pose the alien question, because this whole, blonde hair, blue eyes, German descent, it's just not enough. It's not enough to have the cojones to think that you could take over the world. It's just...
I know, because what would make them any different than the people in Sweden or something? I mean, it'd be about the same.
Right.
I know. It's odd. I did read a book. This is like 25, 30 years ago, about Hitler, and he became, I think, if I remember correctly, demonically possessed, or, he'd have weird fits, and he'd see like creatures in the room, and people interpreted it as being perhaps demonically possessed, but maybe it was actual communication with these kind of... there is demonic possession, yes, but I don't know whether that was it or something similar. He was definitely offbeat. He really was.
A very evil man. And I kind of took all of this more obscure kind of history and rolled it into a story.
Yeah. Well, that's what I remember just in regular reading and stuff was the weirdness was Hitler's rise to power, when at the time Germany had been the most advanced country in Europe at the time, the best educated and all that, and you just figure they wouldn't buy into this nutcase,
Mm-hmm.
You might figure a broke down country might, grasp at any straw or whatever. But I don't know. But he was an enigma. And so this Vril Society was basically something he was associated with, though, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Him, Bormann, Himmler, all of them. They these women, they just kind of worshipped, and they would sit around them in a circle, and they'd do their little seance, and they'd talk to these aliens, and they'd spit out all these words in different languages that they could never have known.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
And a little side note that I found especially interesting was after the war was over and Germany knew that they were, not quite over, but they knew they were about to lose.
Yeah, the number was up, yeah.
Maria Orsic and her gals were never to be found. And some people say they escaped in a spaceship.
Jeez.
So again, no way of proving it, but nobody ever found them.
Well, I do remember other books, about the same time I read that book about Hitler and his seances or whatever he had, that they speculated in there is how in the heck these people could come up with devices that were so far beyond other very civilized countries like England, States, and all that. It wasn't like we didn't have our own slew of scientists or something. And, light years ahead of what was available. And that always has been a question I've had, too. It really has. How could they make these great leaps and bounds and missiles and everything else? And, it's just by God's good grace they didn't win the war. It really is.
I think to me, Hitler's biggest mistake was his racism towards Jewish people, because if he was not racist and included them as equal Germans, he would have won, because on our side of the pond, all of the Jewish Germans are inventing the nuclear bomb. So
that's true too.
if he was, we got some genius Germans too out of the deal. And he scoffed them off, and he, was ready to kick them to the curb, and a lot of them managed to escape. And
Einstein types, others.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And I
never have understood that, why they. I guess I'm being an idiot, because I guess there's been anti-Semitism for thousands of years or something, but I never really understood why they're down on the poor old Jews, because they never were very much in number as far as, percentage of the German population or whatever. And what was also weird, Dina, is I know for a fact from reading World War II stuff that there was a significant number of Jewish patriot types in World War I that were actually army heroes and stuff. And they were treated a little better than the average Jew, yes. But still, during Hitler's time. But what I'm saying is they were a very integral part of German society up until Hitler's rise to power. They weren't, they weren't ostracized or made out to be demonized until he got there. They were actually pillars of the community, if you will. But
well, there's some famous book. What is it called? It's called The Priory or the Propriety or something of Zion.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't remember. I don't know what the exact term is about. I remember the Priory of Zion or something like that. Yeah, I don't know what. I saw that term or that book mentioned some years ago, but I forget in what context.
Well, I saw it in the Holocaust Museum, actually in Skokie, Illinois, where I guess great museum, but they had it, in a big box in an exhibit, and I wish I can't remember the exact name, but it was Priory of Zion or something.
Yeah,
that was like a bestseller in its day, and it just totally ragged on Jewish people, and it just created that fervor, that anti-Jewish fervor that was so easy for Hitler to cash in on and unite people. He united a whole country based on hate. So he didn't start the hate. It was already there.
Yeah, I guess he didn't. But there were a significant number, like I say, of German war heroes in World War I that were Jewish. But they didn't send them. They had a special place they sent them instead of the camps. They had a more mild way of dealing with them. But the whole thing was very bizarre. The Hitler's deal was very bizarre. And, we're coming right up pretty close to the top of the hour break, but we're going to get back. We'll talk about whether you think Hitler made it to Antarctica or not, because that's always been an issue. And I really think there's something that smells about Antarctica anyway, separate and distinct from Hitler, because I don't know. I've just heard things over the many years, and there's something that doesn't fit about Antarctica that you wonder what kind of skullduggery is going on down there is what it really amounts to. But I don't know. Your book is an excellent book, and we should mention it again before the break. It's the sequel. It's available at Amazon, especially right now. My goodness, Dina, 99 cents. You'd have to be a nitwit not to get it at Amazon.com.
Absolutely.
My goodness, if you wouldn't know a bargain if it hits you in the nose without that. But I do know, and like I say, I don't have the number on everything like nobody much does, but I've always sensed ever since I was a kid about that JFK thing, when they had remakes of it and that analysis, when they did have more, maybe better reporting. Because at one time, like I mentioned to you on the phone, NBC had a really good special. They had 3 of the best Marine Corps snipers available, and they couldn't duplicate Oswald's shot. Not in a million years. And Oswald was not a sniper or anything of that category. So I've smelled a rat in what they tell us for a long time is all I'm really saying.
Right.
And your book certainly does underscore a lot of areas where we've been lied to. There's no telling. Well, I tell you what, let's go to our top of the hour break, and we'll be right back. Well, I'm glad to be back on with Dina, and she's written this book on all these very interesting topics called The Sequel, and it's available at Amazon.com for 99 cents. People, come on, spring the 99 cents. I mean, that's spend more than that on a power bar. At least I do. But this hollow earth thing is really an interesting thing to me. That really is. I've heard, what was it, Admiral Byrd?
Yep.
What was that? He had an Arctic expedition where he saw some opening into the earth or something like that.
You're right on the money, Kevin. You're right on the money. Admiral Byrd went to the Antarctica right after World War II, and
was the Antarctic or the Arctic?
I'm sorry, Antarctica.
Okay.
And I think he was at the North Pole too earlier.
Yeah, but I think he was. Yeah.
He went to Antarctica because Hitler went to Antarctica, and our country wanted to know why Hitler sent his ships all the way to Antarctica to see a block of ice, basically.
I know that never made any sense either. No.
Right, and Hitler was interested in Antarctica because I think Sweden was there and planted a flag and called it New Swabia. And there's this section of the continent called Queen Maud, and again, why everyone's so excited to see what's in the middle of nowhere on a block of ice is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Hitler originally went there. He said he was going there because they had a great whaling station, and they were looking for fat from the whales so they could use it for soap. That was his official excuse.
That's a pretty limp reason. I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't drive across the street to find some whale blubber. I mean, they got it, fine, whatever.
Yeah, he's just started taking over the world, and I think I'll go to Antarctica. I'll have all my men, just cruise over there. It's right around the block, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. No. But I mean, I think I've heard over the many years that there's something offbeat about Antarctica. I mean, little blurbs you'd hear about anomalies or something really unusual. Like I say, just little snippets of things over the years. Not any, like you say, there's no real good reporting on it, but something smells a rat about Antarctica, like you're saying, with the Hitler involvement and everything else.
Well, supposedly his men found a cave that was at least 30 miles deep. And inside of this cave was a lake that was warm.
Oh, yeah?
Like one of those geothermal hot spring things.
Volcanic activity or something, I guess.
Yeah. They set up a base there, and they called it Base 211. Yeah. And again, why he did it, who knows? Who knows? But like you were talking about, in 1946, Admiral Richard Byrd goes there.
Yeah.
And his operation was called Operation High Jump, and the government the government was not fooling around. They sent way more people and ships than Hitler did. They sent 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft.
Good Lord.
And the United States said they were going there for training. For training and storing knowledge, whatever that means. Not we want to see what's down there because Hitler was down there. They didn't say that.
Right.
But that was the official reasoning.
Well, that's a pretty limp-wristed, that's a pretty questionable excuse, because if they wanted northern training, the Arctic is a lot more accessible, and if it's cold water training you want to do, you can do it to your heart's content there instead of going to Antarctica. That is weird. That is
right. Now, Admiral Byrd kept a journal. He was known for being meticulous about recording everything that he saw. Well, that journal's lost.
Oh, it's lost, is it?
Yeah, it's lost.
Well, that's weird. You get everything else. It's in history that's been kept, and they conveniently lose that, huh?
Right. Wow. Some men on the trip were supposedly telling people they found flying discs and Mercury-powered aircraft. Again, is that Hitler or is that aliens? I don't know, because Hitler was there first, and Hitler did have a very strange part of a weapon they found on the border of Germany and Poland called Die Glock, and it supposedly was it was set up. It looks like a bell, but the bell part of the weapon was missing, just the blueprints, and it had this ring around. This humongous like iron ring that with chains, like it would chain it from flying away.
Oh, really?
So again, with this this idea of anti-gravity, which is what spaceships would have to have in order to get here. So again, if they did find something with anti-gravity, was it aliens or was it Hitler?
Yeah. Wow. And I don't know. I had heard rumors over the years that Hitler had some kind of alien connection too, but I didn't know. You know, you just hear little disjointed things. I never made a study of it like you have, but I heard little snippets over the years. But Antarctica always has been questionable. Now that you describe that, that's very questionable. Sent all those men, 4,700 men, down to some awful place. For what reason? I mean. For military
training,
like I say. Yeah, but I mean, that's why I'm saying for cold weather training, there's, you've got all of Canada to fool with, or Greenland, or something where the Coast Guard is. I mean, it's just not necessary to go to an awful place like that and back and beyond. But and even to this day, there's all that intense effort and emphasis on Antarctica to this day, isn't there? I mean, the U.S.
Well, Byrd supposedly told some people that the Earth was hollow and there was an entry point right by Hitler's base 211. So,
well, now that would make sense that there'd be something like that. I've heard little hollow Earth theorists before, and of that before, and I mean, at this point, Dina, things are so exotic, I wouldn't doubt anything.
Right.
I mean, but that is weird. I know Hitler was, I have read in books about him, he was demonically possessed, though, from all accounts. I mean, he would go into like fits and start, they called him, some of his assistants would call him the rug biter, his orderlies or whatever you call it, because he would like almost become demonically possessed and like he'd see something in the corner of the room and say, oh, it's come for me or whatever like that. And he'd start, jumping around like the devil was after him or something, see? But but I mean, I don't know whether it's alien, demonic, or both. I don't know. But he was definitely an exotic character, man. But
here, this is a little weird tidbit. Like one of the first things he did when he took over Germany as chancellor, he went to this museum in Austria and took the he just took the art of, how he is famous for taking artifacts and artwork from wherever he wanted. First thing he stole, I should say, was the Spear of Destiny.
Oh yeah.
Which
the one that was thrown in the side of Christ, you mean? Is that the one, or?
Yeah. So kind of a weird relic for a devil worshiper. Or demon.
Yeah, he's kind of. Yeah, no, it is, and also, believe it or not, he was all. I'm a Catholic too, but I mean, he was always a Catholic. I mean, you figure how they'll match up with being a Catholic, but I mean, who knows? I mean, Catholics are a large enough group to have a negative contingent too, I'm sure. But yeah, I know he was always big into artifacts. religious artifacts. He sure was.
Yeah, he really respected these items. And again, why were they? Are they more than relics? Are they some kind of alien technology to it? A lot of questions with all of that.
Well, in that same book I read many years ago, they even had like disc-shaped craft, or working on a disc-shaped craft. The Nazis were, and I mean that was totally out of in the propeller-driven airplane picture. I mean, I know they developed jet engines, yes, but still they had some kind of craft. They had pictures of in this book that were Nazi craft that had like a disc-shaped, almost UFO-y look to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wanted to throw in real quick the same time he at the same year. It's actually the same year he had his Nazis cruise over to Antarctica. He had another group of Nazis. Again, I know maybe I'm repeating myself, but they went over to the Himalayan mountains.
Oh yeah. He was all kinds of exotica they were after.
Yeah.
All kinds.
He I guess he thought that's where the Aryan race originated.
So. Oh, I didn't know where they said they originated. Well, I don't know, but I think that one of the ones that was big into it with him was what was that? Heinrich Himmler.
Himmler, you're right. Yeah, Himmler and Bormann.
Yeah,
Martin Bormann.
They kind of it was alluded to that they were perhaps Satanists, but I mean I don't know. But they definitely were occultist kinds of some form, and I don't know. I mean, but the thing that has always gotten me, like I said, I'm glad we brought that up about the Antarctic and Byrd and all that, because I'm not saying I'm any military expert or anything, but I mean, you would never drag 4,700 guys out there on some expeditionary deal just to snoop. I mean, you might send a ship or two just to see what it looks like or something, but they had something in mind dragging 4,700 people down there. I mean, just the logistics of it in that time.
And 33 planes?
Oh, that's way over the top for just geographical survey mission or something like that. That wouldn't be that. And especially at the time they did it, I mean, it wasn't like, even now that place is back and beyond. But we're coming up to our last break, and we've still got a lot more to discuss. And this is some pretty good stuff, people. You don't hear this everywhere. But we'll be right back with Dina in just a minute. We'll be right back. Well, it's good to be back with Dina, and time's going fast in a good interview like this. But I don't know, Dina, but obviously something was awry in that deal with Byrd. It's something unusual with Hitler. And I guess, well, the Hollow Earth thing, I don't know, but Byrd was a pretty credible individual, wasn't he? I mean, he wasn't some yo-yo. He was an admiral. I mean, explorer, well thought of, all that.
Yeah, he was legit.
Yeah, I thought he was. Anything else we've missed from the book that we should talk about, though?
Well, real quick, I did want to give my props to the book was called The Protocol of the Elders of Zion. That's the book. Yes. So I totally messed that up. The Priory of Zion.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think there was something that was a Priory of Zion. Maybe that's another issue.
That's Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code, I think. But Protocols of Elders of Zion, and it was a book that anybody who read just hated Jews right after.
Jeez. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it seems like I remember that now that you recollected. I meant to refresh my memory on that. But I don't know. I never have understood the anti-Jew hatred. It seems like they're just hardworking cusses and go about their business. Who cares what they do,
Right. People are people. You got good ones, you got bad ones in every culture. I'm sorry. That's just reality. And I mean, I guess if that's what you need to do to make yourself feel better, but
there is a frequency of people doing that as far as picking some group out as scapegoats for their problems. There's that, but I don't know.
Right.
Now but as far as the Rothschild business, he has been implicated in a lot of squirrely issues. So, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he is okay. Yeah, he's definitely running the international banking world. He's running Europe. There's no doubt about it. But you know, his ancestors, that was handed to him from his ancestors. So,
yeah, I believe it was. Well, obviously, you know, really, just as an overview of this whole thing, I think that if one was going to be intellectually honest, you'd have to, like we started the show, people would have to realize with the stuff we've talked about tonight is like the media is not free to present stories. It has a filter. It's given filters by somebody or some group. I mean, and because like we started the show talking a little bit about like Trump and stuff like that. And yes, he's a squirrely character, but they never were as open on stories about Bill Clinton. I mean, you know, the Bushes were goofballs, or all the rest of them have their own peculiarities. I mean, Trump could sneeze and they'd make it into the worst thing that's ever happened on earth or something, you know? So obviously somebody's told that you go out and gun down Trump, and the next story find something, I don't care what it is. And
yeah, I mean, I feel you're absolutely right. He steps on his foot. He is not a smooth, suave politician, and he's a billionaire. He's used to everyone bowing down to him, and now no one's doing that. And I kind of feel sorry for him because he didn't realize how swampy this swamp is, and
I don't know, he couldn't have.
They are out to destroy him, and he's playing right into it with this. He's defensive about every single cotton picking thing, and
well, he puts his foot in his mouth a lot. He does. I mean, if you were just like his running mate, that Pence, is kind of a closed mouth type and kind of a conservative-y kind of, you know, rigid kind of person. Pence, if he were in there, would say very little about something. He might make a few snappy comments, and that's it. Next question.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be like Bush was. I mean, Bush would answer a few things, and then let's go to the next question and goodbye. But they obviously are out to gun him down. They really are.
Yeah, Obama the same. Yeah, I mean, Obama the same way. You're absolutely right. These politicians all know the lingo. They all know how to shut down a reporter. They just know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can't press the president. I mean, you know, he's not going to bow down and scrape to you. But you know what? One thing Heidi, my co-host, was in love with Obama, like he's the best thing since sliced bread. But just to show you how things are not really reported honestly. Okay, Obama is worth a fortune.
Yeah.
And I know he's supposed to have gotten good-sized book royalties, but I smell a rat on that. Somebody said he made $60 million on his book. I don't buy that. Hillary Clinton only got $9 million advance. Right. I mean, Obama's had all kinds of exotic descriptions of his wealth, and he's only been out of office since January. And you say, he made it on speeches. Well, no, he didn't make it on speeches. He ain't even been able to make speeches till just January to now. And these estimates of his wealth, he has a whole lot more money if he saved every nickel when he was in office. They only make $500,000 or $700,000 a year. I mean, it's not like he could have $90 or $100 million.
Right.
So I just don't buy all that. Because I know for a fact the guy here in town, Obama wanted to buy his house in Hawaii for $25 million, and he didn't like Obama. He wouldn't sell it to him.
Well, speaking of houses, I mean, before he even was elected as president, I used to live in Chicago, and I'm sure maybe your producer could attest to this too. When he was running for president. He was broke. The minute he ran for president, he got a new address right away, and it was all over the local Chicago news that he just bought a $300,000 house in Hyde Park, right by the University of Chicago, by the way.
Really?
That's all mansions. They're, $2, $3, $4, $5 million mansions, and he got his mansion for $300,000. So,
in other words, it was just something you couldn't do without a brother-in-law deal, then, basically.
Right. I mean, how does that work, right?
Well, I know, and there's also been some illusions. I don't know how valid they were because I never investigated and wouldn't know how to go about it. But there's been some illusions that Obama was groomed to take over that office for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. That's been discussed. Well, Dina, so what else you got in the works here? You got working on anything else that's coming up, or you just going to push this book for a while? Or?
I am working on another novel. It's not part of the series. It's going to be a futuristic sci-fi type of thing. And I'm waiting very patiently. I wrote a book a few years ago called Big Pharma, Big Agra, Big Conspiracy, and it was my only nonfiction book about the pharmaceutical and agricultural corporations. And I've been waiting so patiently for the change in healthcare to write my sequel to that. And, nothing happened so far. So I thought,
I know. Who knows whether it will? Yeah.
Right. I thought, Trump's elected. I can finally write my my part 2 to Big Agra, and nothing happened there. So it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to write another fictional novel, and it's something I love to do. That I think will be part of my life, till I'm too senile or too sick to do it, and I'll always be working on something.
Well, I really admire you for that, because I've written one book, Marian Apparitions Are Real, and that's the only, it was such an exhaustive effort that, and I don't like editing. I really don't like editing. And it would, like I've told people before, if I had a choice between, do you want to write another book or do you want to work in the Pennsylvania coal mine, swing a pick? I think I'd take the coal mine. I really do. But I got to admire you for the effort in it. I mean, my goodness, it's like going 50 rounds every day. But I sure have enjoyed it, Dina, and I hope that people go to Amazon.com and get that sequel. And what's the other title to the other book? I'm sorry.
The bestseller. And you'd probably enjoy the sequel if you read the bestseller first.
Okay, well, I urge everybody to do that, and especially take advantage of that offer right now. 99 cents. If you can't do that, you're not trying very hard. But it's a bargain. You ought to take advantage of it. Well, Dina, I tell you what, I guess I better let you go, and we'll sail off into the night, and I'll mention next week, and we'll clock out, I guess.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for having me. You are just such a gracious and wonderful host, and I'm not only a guest, I'm also a fan. So thanks again.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Well, you take care up there in Chicagoland. At least you have a little cool weather up here. Unlike no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. You're down here with me in hell.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, you take care, and we'll say good night to everybody. Good night.
Good night, Kevin.